Hey everyone, Bloom swinging in here on the real life jungle gym. There's this jungle vine that I swung on to get to this bamboo merkaba. Now I'm gonna switch into this hammock. And for those of you who don't know what a merkaba is, it's two pyramids in opposite directions. This upwards pyramid, which some refer to as representing the masculine energies, and then the downwards pyramid representing the feminine energies. And they say that the merkaba is within our auric field, and we all have these masculine and feminine energies, and when we're truly in harmony and integrated, we have both of them spinning in opposite directions at the same speed, creating our activated light body. So you can look up more about the merkaba if you want to learn more about that. But yeah, I'm just sharing a little bit about what I do here every day. There's my yoga mat. It's my magic carpet. I sit on it when I'm on my computer doing work, and I sit on it out here in nature doing yoga. So it takes me on all sorts of inner and outer journeys of transformation. And I do my yoga practice here almost every day. I do pull-ups on the bamboo with these gloves, and then I do shavasana in this hammock. So it's a pretty amazing setup. And this statue is of Millie Edgerton. She's the lady who initially lived here and alchemized this land. It used to be non-forest, and now it's a forest with beautiful trees. There's a rainbow eucalyptus, and yeah, it's really amazing actually being in a place that's been restored and alchemized into a beautiful forest, and getting to be here every day with this bamboo merkaba. And yeah, it feels like true pura vida, which means pure life. That's the thing that everyone says here in Costa Rica, and it really reflects the reality, because I feel like it's the spell that's constantly being cast here, that spell, because spell is from spelling, and the words that we say cast the spells, and everyone saying pura vida all the time maintains that energy of a pure life for the people and the environment, which is amazing. So I'm gonna jump into the Bloom report right now and just update you all. It's a little different than the Bloomberg report, because this is more of the magical worldview of what's going on through my lens. So we're going through a really catastrophic time. A lot of people are just feeling like the world is ending. Maybe it's the end times. Maybe it's just like everything is collapsing. And I just want to remind everyone that that's what a caterpillar feels like when it's about to create its cocoon and its cells are dissolving and it's about to turn into a butterfly. And so the metaphor for that, just real quick, is the caterpillar eats and eats and eats and eats, kind of like capitalistic industrial growth society. And then once it can't really move anymore and it's just like at its peak point of being a caterpillar, it finds somewhere to crawl up to and starts making a cocoon because it's really tired and it just wants to take this really long nap. And then what happens is, in the cocoon, the cells start dissolving completely, and imaginal cells, which were already in the caterpillar but were dormant, they weren't active, they start becoming active, and the imaginal cells start coming online, and more imaginal cells are growing. And the caterpillar cells at first try to attack these imaginal cells because it's something new to the system, and for the caterpillar it's like, oh, I'm dying and these new cells are trying to take me over. And so the caterpillar cells are attacking the butterfly cells, the imaginal cells, but then ultimately all the cells dissolve and the imaginal cells take over and become this complete goo. So it's not a half caterpillar, half butterfly at any point. It just becomes a full-on goo, full rebirth, and starts forming the imaginal cells. And if you know anything about sacred geometry, in the embryo of all beings, you and me, we all started out as these little embryos. When we were inoculated, the egg and the sperm met. What starts happening is the cells start dividing one at a time. So it goes 1 to 2, and then keeps going until it makes the seed of life. So if you've ever seen that sacred geometry pattern, the seed of life with 6 circles and then a 7th circle surrounding it, kind of like the 6 days of creation and the 7th day of rest, and a lot of other parallels. That's where we all were at one point. And when the caterpillar becomes the butterfly, it goes through that process again a second time, goes back to the seed of life, but this time with imaginal cells. And then those imaginal cells of the greater imagination of this being start to form into the butterfly, and those little tiny cells, those 6 cells within the 7th cell, start forming the essential organs, just like it did for you and me, and then grows into the full butterfly. And the butterfly emerges from the chrysalis, from the cocoon, and is an awakened butterfly being that goes and flies up with all the other butterflies and gets to make new babies, and is an angel, light being, essentially an earth angel. And so we're going through that process collectively. Everything seems like it's collapsing. The economy seems like it's collapsing. The government seems like it's collapsing. And in that process, there's these caterpillar cells that are trying to hold on to the power of what it's been building. And some people call that the cabal. Some people call that the Illuminati. Some people just call it the corporate tyrants, powers that be, the ones that are pushing for this agenda. Some say that they're going to try to make a one world currency and a one world government and a one world religion, and just completely take control of all the people, of our consciousness, of our finances. And then goes even deeper with this whole idea of there's the mark of the beast, where everyone will have to get the mark of the beast, but if they don't, then they can't buy or sell or trade anything in economics, and they'll be outcasted from society. And then there will be like an antichrist that rises up and claims world peace, and people start following this person that's a leader for world peace. And then into the campaign a little bit, the person will show their true colors, and then turns out to be the antichrist and brings hell on earth. So that's one possible reality of worldview that people talk about from the Bible. But they also say that those who are in tune with spirit and believers and all of that will be long gone and in heaven by then. And the thing is, heaven, where is heaven? Heaven can be on earth. And I believe in multidimensional theory. And so with dimensions, the best way to think about it is there's a dot is the first dimension, and you can think of that as like the point of all creation. Before there was any of this, there was just isness, creation, existence. And from that dot, eventually 1 became 2. So the oneness, there was an impulse or conscious decision or whatever it was. I think it was just a natural part of the cycle. I think it's an infinite repeating cycle with no beginning and no end. So I think the oneness became the two-ness, and then that creates the second dimension. So 1 dot in 2 dimensions becomes a line, and then that just life keeps growing. So that just keeps growing. So 1 line, then the next move that 1 line can make, that would add a completely new element, a new dimension that hasn't been explored in that 1 dimension, would be a 90-degree perpendicular line. So 1 dimension becomes 2 dimensions, and that creates the XY grid. And then from there, X, Y, and Z, that creates the 3rd dimensional grid. And then there's movement, that 3 dimensions. Okay, it's all the dimensions that it can possibly go. Then what happens? It has to go a 4th dimension. So that's 3 dimensions moving through time. So the 4th dimension is time. And then a lot of people like to talk about this idea of 5D, the 5th dimension. What is the 5th dimension? A lot of people say, oh, it's ascension, it's everything is perfect, everything is beautiful, we're in our true forms. These are all great, but they're also kind of abstract. So I like to think about it a little bit more mathematically. So we have the 4 dimensions, 3D moving through time. What's the 5th dimension? So this is the best way that I can wrap my head around it, because they say that being a 4th dimensional being, like 3D physically moving through the 4th dimension of time, it's hard for us to contemplate the 5th dimension, to fully understand it unless we experience it. But I think there's ways that we can perceive it. So let's go back to the dot and think about this concept of a flatlander. So you've all played like the little Game Boy video games and things back in the day. where it's just in 2 dimensions, 2-dimensional plane. So what happens first, if we have the first dimension, it's a dot, and then we bring it onto a 2D plane, XY grid, it looks like a little stick figure or a little 8-bit character or a character in your video game. And then you bring that into the 3rd dimension, so that little character becomes 3D and is in this form where you and I exist in the physical plane. And so if we think about dots expanded into the next dimension, that dot that becomes a 2D character, then it has arms and legs and a whole body, and it's a being. So what do we see as dots in this existence, in this 3D realm within the 4th dimension of time? The sun, the moon, stars. We see a lot of dots, orbs, spheres. And what happens if we go into the 5th dimension? What does that look like? Well, I guess we'll find out once we get to the 5th dimension. But just think about that. If a dot in the 1st dimension becomes a being in the 2nd dimension, what does a sphere in the 3rd and 4th dimension become in the 5th dimension? So think about this. There's been a long history of people tapped into different spiritual lineages and mythologies, talking about all these gods, sun gods and planetary gods and beings, and that's what paganism was. It was just like acknowledging all these different gods, and all these indigenous and ancient religions were acknowledging all these ancient gods and beings. And was it just a figment of our imagination? Well, I mean, if you existed on a 1st dimensional plane, a 2nd dimensional being would maybe be a figment of your imagination. So, existing in this plane, the 5th dimensional realm is full of possibilities. And if you're following what I'm talking about, if you're picking up what I'm putting down, essentially what I feel from what I've realized through a series of just contemplating this, having psychedelic experiences, deep meditation experiences, conversations, research, what I feel is that all the stars we see in the night, all the planets, the sun and the moon, they're all ascended masters. They're all interdimensional beings, and they exist on all the polarities of existence. That's why in Hinduism they have Shiva and they have Krishna, they have Kali, and they have Radha. They're embodying different aspects of existence. And I think that they are actual beings, and we see them as stars that are illuminating the night, and they're just existing in the next dimension, holding down the universe, keeping it all together. And the thing is, on this plane, we've developed such a fear of the darkness and such a fear of like the evil trickster spirits. And in reality, I'm just going to be honest with you, none of this would exist if it wasn't for all of the energies and all of the forces. And that doesn't mean that we can't create a world that has peace and harmony and eradicates the shadow. We can do the shadow work, but the shadow can be in balance. The shadow can be healthy. And that's the goal, is to have an integration between healthy light and healthy shadow, because even the light can be toxic. There's all these posts happening now of like, oh, spiritual, toxic, bypassing and all these things. The light can be toxic, the dark can be toxic, but the light can be healthy and the dark can be healthy. And when the light and the dark are healthy and integrated, that's when we create wholeness and start to ascend to the next dimension. So I'm gonna add another layer here. This is not something that I've looked into enough to prove, but it just lit something up in me, so I'm gonna share it. I went to a talk with Dr. Bruce Lipton. He's an epigenetic author, and he talked about how when people are in a state of love, the love frequency, they actually emit photons and are illuminated and shine more light. And he was saying, I need to research this more, but he was saying they've actually been able to, with special cameras or something, they've been able to see more light emitted from people that are in that love vibration. Maybe they're on their honeymoon, or they just fell in love, or they're just like, they've been meditating a lot and they have all this self-love cultivated. Whatever it is, when people are in that full love vibration, they're in love, they emit more photons, according to what Dr. Bruce Lipton said. And regardless of if that's true or not, what that triggered in my mind and made me think about, actually, when I was on mushrooms at the Beloved Festival on the dance floor, peaking. Sometimes that's the best way for realizations to come through. What happened for me in my consciousness in that moment was I had been thinking about these interdimensional theories that I was just talking about, and I thought, wow, so me as a human being, I'm made up of many cells that make up my body, and according to what a holon is, there's this term holon. A holon is something that is whole within itself and part of a larger whole. So all of my cells are whole within themselves. They have a nucleus, they digest and excrete, they have chemical composition. They're like little beings that make up me. And then I, in the theory of Gaia, Gaia being the whole organism of the earth, including all the beings and plants and animals in the atmosphere of the earth, I am a cell within the larger body of Gaia, of planet Earth, of Mother Earth. And so what I realized is, how did a star being get to become a star? Well, if in the love frequency, in the unified love frequency, we emit more photons of light, what would happen if the whole entire world became a unified field of love and of light? Just think about that. I know it kind of feels heady and kind of feels like a pipe dream, and I feel like it's achievable, and it might be way, way in the future, but who knows? So essentially, this is just an idea. I thought maybe a star being is a whole planet that achieved unity consciousness and ascended into the next dimension. And so that's scary because it means the loss of our individuality. That's ego loss. But what it means is that we unify to become a whole unified being to join the rest of the unified beings. And so it's like, there's this saying, I am another you and you are another me, in Lakesh. It's a Mayan term. So I am another you is in Lakesh and you are another me is Alakin. And essentially we're all the same beings in different bodies. We get these unique forms for this amount of time. We're all going to die at some point. But if we get to a point of full unity consciousness, we're going to ascend into the next dimension as a star being to join the other star beings, and then we'll get to be there to help the next generation of planets that have many cells of individual organisms and beings trying to figure it out. And we can help out with the cosmic evolution of the next generation. And then we get to discover what's beyond that, because there's another level beyond that we probably can't even start to conceive in this dimension, or perceive in this dimension. And I want to share something else. I went to a museum yesterday, and I went to a pre-Columbian exhibit. Everyone had their masks on. We were practicing social distancing, don't worry. But there was a pre-Columbian exhibit of the indigenous people of Costa Rica, and it was amazing and beautiful, and I'm so glad I got to go there. I can post some pictures and videos of it. But the best part was in the middle. There was an interactive exhibit. It was animation. You go into this room and you're surrounded 360 by this wall that has projectors on it, and it's this whole animation that says the whole creation story, and more than creation, it's the cosmological story of the spiritual realms of the Bribri tribe, which is a tribe here in Costa Rica on the Caribbean. And it was amazing to see their view of the whole realm of existence in the different dimensions and planes was like a teepee, like the teepee they live in. There's a teepee going up and a teepee going down, and in each layer I think there's like 4 layers up and 4 layers down, and the middle layer it might be 3 layers up, 3 layers down, and then the 7th layer is the earth plane in the middle. And for them, up is good and down is good, and up includes some bad realms and down includes some bad realms, and it's not like heaven and hell. It's like Mother Earth is down here, who created all the people, like a potter. She's a potter, and she like Harry Potter, she's a potter, and she sculpts everyone out of clay. And then the father spirit, the masculine spirit, is up there, and that's where the complete silence is. And if any of you know anything about Bufo, I'm not going to go too far into this, but there's two types of Bufo: the synthesized, meaning man-made, and the natural, from the toad. And the natural takes you into this whole psychedelic journey into the next dimension. The synthesized takes you into the white light, purity, consciousness. And they're both amazing. And the thing is, down doesn't mean bad. Down means the earth. Up means the sky and the cosmos and the celestial beings. And the thing is, we've been controlled and manipulated by being told that there's this scary place and scary being, and I'm sorry if anyone's getting offended here, because I know it's breaking a lot of conditioning, but the thing is, pagans have known this for a long time, indigenous people have known this for a long time. The earth and the sky in harmony creates earth harmony, and that's it. We don't have to be scared of this dark place in this dark realm. And the thing is, in this Bribri creation myth, there's a dark realm in the higher realms, and there's a dark realm in the lower realms, and that's where like the sick and the lost go. And beyond that is where the noble souls go, down there, and beyond that, up there, is where like the pure silence is. So it's almost like the shamanic indigenous lineages are deeply rooted in the earth, in the lower realms, and the meditating high angelic consciousness is up there in the sky. And when they unite in harmony, we create heaven on earth and peace on earth, and it's possible. And back to this idea of the unity consciousness and the global metamorphosis, I feel like there's different layers of it, and a lot of people talk about ascension involving ascending while still being incarnated on the earth. And I think that's a phase of it. I think we can create and achieve heaven on earth, unity consciousness, peace on earth, and get to enjoy that for as long as we want, until the earth is ready to fully ascend into being a star being. So there's nothing to be afraid of. I feel like that will happen if and when the whole planet is ready. And until then, it's possible to get to a state of being embodied, incarnated on the earth, fully in harmony with everyone having their needs met. And the way to do that is we don't exclude the shadow. We bring it in and integrate it and create harmony with the shadow. And we find ways to resolve shadow things that come up, and to have practices for reform and redress, and just finding ways to make things work. If someone's lost and confused, we have a support system. If someone doesn't have their needs met, we have a support system. If someone is angry, we have a support system. If someone is violated, we have a support system for both the violator and the violated. And we find ways that work best for that, and we take into account cultural considerations. So just checking to make sure that this was still filming. Those are my Bloom downloads for today. I hope you reach out and let me know what you think. Let me know if I'm way off on anything, or if I'm right on anything, or if you have other insights to go deeper. There's more specifics about each thing that I could go into in a later share, but I think this is good for now, keeping it as concise as possible. Thanks so much for watching. This is Bloom. Thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to hearing from you. All my love. Pura vida.